The Monday blues, I guess it refers to that kind of set of negative emotions that people get just before the beginning of their work week.
And if you're the type of person like I was as well, if you think Friday is the best day of the week, I think there is a problem there.
But I think contrary to popular belief, it's not just about hating work. It's often more subtle than that. It's more about the lack of control and the lack of autonomy around your time and your freedom.
It sort of numbs you from the lack of fulfillment that you are getting from your job because the weekend is great, and you almost put your desires, put your dreams on the back burner because your life is actually okay in the moment.
If you look around and question, is there an alternative approach to this before I even get on the conveyor belt?
I know that it's 100% possible to actually love work and really enjoy Monday mornings again.
I think for many people, stepping off that conveyor belt and embracing lifestyle design, that can be the key to overcoming the Monday blues, because welcome to the Dropship Unlocked Podcast, your key to unlocking the secrets of high-ticket dropshipping. I'm Lewis Smith, founder of Dropship Unlocked, and with me is our client success coach, James Eardley. Now, when we're not recording podcast episodes, we're running our own e-commerce businesses and helping aspiring entrepreneurs launch their own high-ticket dropshipping businesses. So if you're ready to learn how to build your own 6 or even 7-figure business, pick up a copy of my book, The Home Turf Advantage, whether you're looking to replace your income or launch a side hustle. I wrote this book as a roadmap to help you launch a low-maintenance, high-profit e-commerce business that gives you the freedom to spend more time with your family, travel the world, and work on your own terms. Ready to join us? Visit htabook.com to get your copy today. Now sit back, relax, and let's unlock your potential with the Dropship Unlocked podcast.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Dropship Unlocked podcast. My name's James Eardley and I'm joined again today by serial entrepreneur and founder of Dropship Unlocked, Lewis Smith. So the topic today is something that I think is going to resonate with a lot of people listening, and it's the culture that we live in the UK, and I'm sure abroad and wherever you're listening from, about living for the weekend. And so many people dread the Monday feeling, and sometimes this is referred to as the Monday blues. And that feeling on a Sunday night, Monday, you feel it in the pit of your stomach and you're just looking forward to the weekend. So Lewis, I'm sure you probably felt this as well. I know I certainly have. But what sort of feelings are associated with that term Monday blues?
James, yeah, definitely an interesting topic that I'm keen to dive into today. The Monday blues, I guess it refers to that kind of set of negative emotions that people get just before the beginning of their work week. So as the weekend is drawing to a close, that Sunday night feeling I've also heard it referred to as. And it's just a bit of a sense of dread that creeps in on a Sunday evening, and that kind of restfulness, that anxiety about the work week ahead. And it's almost like a storm cloud that starts to loom its way over as you start that work week. And so something that's quite difficult to ignore if you've experienced that. I know I certainly have. But I think contrary to popular belief, it's not just about hating work. I don't think that everybody who experiences Monday blues necessarily hates their job. That's not the case. It's often more subtle than that. It's more about the lack of control and the lack of autonomy around your time and your freedom. You know, in the same way that a bird that's trapped in a cage, despite being safe, it's fed, it's safe. In that sense, it likes its environment. It still can't get over that feeling of being trapped away from its natural environment, right? And so people often struggle with the Monday blues because I think it's primarily due to that lack of freedom, if you had to put your finger on the real reason why it is. But they can also be to do with the concept of job dissatisfaction, right? So there is no denying that a lot of people dislike the profession that they're in and the work that they do. So the Sunday night feeling or the Monday blues can definitely be linked to a job dissatisfaction. And, you know, if you're missing that feeling of fulfillment in the work that you're doing, that's kind of how it shows up. You know, if you were making a really nice cake, for example, and you had one ingredient missing in the whole recipe, the whole thing's going to taste terrible, you know. And it's the same thing. You can have a life that's got all the ingredients, but it's missing that one key crucial ingredient of fulfillment, say, through your work. And that's how it shows up. It's the Monday blues. That's its way of telling us that something important is missing in our professional, our personal life. And that sense of fulfillment and autonomy is often the reason for it. That lack of autonomy is the reason why that shows up, I think.
It was the case for me back when I was in my 9 to 5. I had that feeling on the Sunday evening, the Monday, I just wasn't excited to go to work. And it wasn't that necessarily I was completely hating my job. It was, like you say, it's more of a lack of freedom than a complete job dissatisfaction. But I knew because I wasn't fulfilled in my job, there was a real issue. And if you're the type of person like I was as well, if you think Friday is the best day of the week, I think there is a problem there, because the amount of our life that we spend working is so huge and such a huge portion of our life that we need to pay attention if we feel like we're just going through a structure that's been given to us by society to look forward to the weekend and to dread every Monday as they come around. So touched on freedom and job dissatisfaction. So do you think these are sort of the main reasons why people feel this Monday blues?
Yeah, I think so. In most cases, it probably does come down to job dissatisfaction, certainly at a surface level anyway. And that's usually due to things like long working hours that you have little control over, or just lack of control about your place of work or how that work gets fulfilled. Maybe it's about being micromanaged, or having a really poor company culture, toxic culture that you're part of. Or even just, you might like everything about it, but it's just not truly meaningful work, and you can't escape that feeling of like, I was destined for more, like surely I could have a greater impact than this. And it's a really difficult one because, it's something that you can't control in the moment. But in today's episode, hopefully we're going to be able to dive into some of the ways that you can achieve fulfillment, even in those circumstances, and what you can do to change your circumstances. I think on the other side of it, it's about work-life balance as well. I know that's a common term that people often use nowadays, but people are stuck in this paradigm of trading time for money. And despite now, I think there's been this like awakening, this realization in society that isn't the only way. And actually, that's probably the least efficient way of earning an income. It's really hard to find personal fulfillment when you are stuck in that trap of working and thinking about work and trading your time for money, and you can't get out of it. It's like if you ever worn a pair of shoes that are too small and you start walking around, you can't ignore the feeling that the shoes are hurting every single step that you take, right? It's just something that is front of mind. And so it's kind of similar when you're constantly being reminded of not being happy about your job. It doesn't matter if someone tells you, oh, don't worry about it. It takes up such a high proportion of your time in your life that you can't just brush it under the rug. You can't just forget about the uncomfortable shoes. They are a big part of your current experience of life, right? So it's really difficult, and it kind of grinds you down. So I think the structure of our work week, where work is so concentrated into 5 days and, personal time is just squeezed into 2 days, Saturday and Sunday, that makes the feeling even worse. It's like saying, I'm not going to eat any nutritious food over the next few weeks. I'm just going to eat junk food. No vitamins, no vegetables, no nutrition. I'm just going to survive on junk food alone. After a while, that lack of balance in your diet is going to start to make you feel ill. Well, it's exactly the same with spending all of our time working. We're not going to have any of that nutrition, any of that nice free time, that autonomy or freedom. It's just work throughout the whole week. And then you end up having no fulfillment, your life's out of balance, and eventually you get ill for different reasons, right? Stress, burnout, things like that. So yeah, it's a difficult one.
It is a difficult one. I think a lot of people, myself included, I always had that feeling like, I'll look after myself and I'll have a great weekend and I'll really enjoy it. But that's an issue in a way, because it sort of numbs you from the lack of fulfillment that you are getting from your job, because the weekend is great, and you almost put your desires, put your dreams on the back burner because your life is actually okay in the moment. It's only when Sunday and Monday come back around that you then have to be confronted by the lack of fulfillment that you get from your job. But by the time Friday comes around again, you numb yourself and you forget, and then you have to start again back on a Monday morning. So it's a bit of a vicious cycle, I'd say. So it is a huge proportion of our life, though, the work that we do. But why do we think that so many people have come to accept that living for the weekend is sort of normal and just the way it is?
It's weird. I mean, it's largely just a societal construct. It's a cultural construct that we've been conditioned to accept, that the Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 grind is the default way to work and live. But I like to question, like, who says that that's the default way? Who makes the rules here? Because I think we see other people who are ahead of us in our journey. When we're at school, we look up at adults or people who are just slightly older than us who are entering into the world of work. And it's like watching them step onto this conveyor belt of life. And suddenly we believe that's what we should do as well. Get onto the conveyor belt, start our careers, And then what happens is, so like you're on one of those baggage belts at the airport, it's like that dictates your path in life without any question or autonomy or control. It's kind of, you don't question if there could be an alternative path. You're just in passive mode. You get on the conveyor belt and you just get taken along to your destination. until eventually you get thrown off the conveyor belt when, you get made redundant or you get fired or you reach retirement, for example, right at the end of it. But I always like to think, what if we didn't put our foot on there in the first place? Or if you're already on it, what if you stepped off? What would happen? If you look around and question, is there an alternative approach to this before I even get on the conveyor belt? Is there an alternative way to experience life? I think that's a really liberating exercise that becomes really exciting when you realize just because everybody else around me is doing this doesn't mean I have to.
Yeah, it's completely a cultural structure. The 9 to 5 and working 40-hour weeks from Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, and then having the weekend to yourself. Somebody decided, back in the industrial age, I'm sure it was, when there was the whole management and leading from the front with your management in terms of the time that people put into work. And we've just held that now for the last few hundred years that is the way to live. We should just live for the weekend. But who's to say that that's right? When you wake up and the sun goes up and the sun goes down, there's no label on that. There's no actual day of the week. So you don't have to live by those rules that we've been sort of taught from the very start of our lives, right the way when we first started school.
Yeah, and I think it's easy because of the school conditioning, of the university conditioning, or you go into the work and you see your boss and all the other employees in your place of work doing it. You kind of internalize that idea that work is just something that we have to endure, and that we can enjoy our real life at the weekend. People talk about living for the weekend, like, oh, what are you doing this weekend? You got plans for the weekend? It's really funny, isn't it? When you think about it, it's like we spend such a huge proportion of our lives in work just hoping that we can have fun and relax in the minor proportion that is allocated to free personal time. And I remember these conversations at my old jobs. I remember going to the coffee shop at work in the office on a Monday morning, and it was all like, hey, what'd you get up to at the weekend? Oh, I'm feeling a bit worse for wear. I've got a bit of a hangover. I had 2 big nights. And you think, wow, you like crammed all of your socializing and partying into 2 nights at the weekend so that you could then go and endure work for another week to then do it all over again. And we're caught in this cycle of like trying to cram life into 2 days. And I think certainly in the city in London, it's a lot more than that sometimes, in that people will try and use the evenings during the week to try and like really cram in as much socializing as they can, with lots of drinking culture in the afternoons after work. And then people, kind of almost just numb the pain of enduring that work week by going out and constantly getting drunk through the week, and then, suffering with a hangover the next day, which makes work even worse and feel less meaningful and less enjoyable. And it's this really vicious cycle. So I think that it's funny, from about Wednesday in the week, people are already just thinking about, what am I going to do for the weekend? They call it hump day, don't they? Because it's like you're over the hump of the week. Now, all I can think about is like, it's downhill from here. I'm just getting towards the weekend. But such a funny thing, if you zoom out and look at this rationally, 5 out of 7 days of your life, right? If your life was 7 days long, 5 of those days, so 71% of your life, if you're living like this, you're just wishing that it was the other remaining 2 days, the 29%, the remainder. Imagine for a moment, just thought exercise, which is quite interesting. Imagine it was the other way around. Imagine a world or a society where since school we'd been conditioned that it was 5 days per week, everybody did what they wanted. You could just chill, enjoy, go to the park, go out with friends, go to restaurants, do whatever you want. And then for 2 days per week, we all kind of knuckled down, were really productive, got loads done, earned our money, and then we had another 5 days of freedom. Imagine what that society would be like if you knew no different. It's a totally different world, isn't it? And now realize that the only reason that you think that that's abnormal is because of the way that you've been conditioned to believe in the world the way that it has been presented to you. But who says that it should be that way? When I went traveling and we moved abroad, I met loads of people who didn't operate in that paradigm at all. And so I think once you realize that you have ultimate control over that, it's just maybe it feels like you don't because of the people you're surrounded by or the job you're in at the moment. Really, it's a game changer. It's completely eye-opening and liberating.
It's so easy to accept what we've always been taught. I know I can resonate with the stories that you had when you went to work and speaking to people that they just were excited that they had a great weekend, but now they're dreading the working week again. When I had conversations and it was that small talk that you have in an office with somebody that you don't see that often, and you just catch up and say, hello, how are you? And I remember every time I did that with somebody, their answer or how they were was completely dependent on the day of the week that it was. So if it was a Monday, they weren't well. No, I'm not good. It's a Monday. Of course, I'm not doing well today. If it was a Wednesday, they're like, it's okay. We're halfway there. If I ask them how they're doing on a Friday, they're quick to say, I'm brilliant. It's a Friday. Of course, I'm doing well today. And I went through this in my 9 to 5 job for a few years, and nothing changed. it was always the way that no matter who I spoke to, so many people had this same outlook on life, that it was dependent on the week was actually how they felt. And I'd be interested if you're listening to this on the way into work, if you listen out for the small talk conversations you have, if it's anything like my office, you'll probably find that people are very much dictated by the day of the week in terms of how they feel. Just a funny observation. It's definitely good to look at what the other options are that we presented. This isn't a doom and gloom podcast that society's so bad how it's set up. I think we're just keen to show you that there is opportunities in today's day and age, that we don't have to follow the structure that's been set out by society all the way up until this point in our lives.
And just to add to that as well, something that I noticed that it isn't necessarily even linked to the day of the week, but it's just like a societal cultural norm is, and I think it might be like a British thing. I don't know if we're, quite pessimistic as a nation, but it's when people say, hey, how are you? The default answer seems to be not bad. Yeah, not bad. It's like, what do you mean not bad? Like, it's like such a glass half empty mentality, isn't it? It's like, well, are you not bad or are you good? Because if you're not bad, then are you just doing okay? Are you just surviving? Or are you amazing? Are you incredible? Are you having an incredible day? No one would ever say that, very rarely that you hear that. But it makes you question, like, if I'm surrounded by people who are not bad, is that how I want to live my life? And for me, it wasn't. If people say, hey, I'm not bad, it always it's a personal gripe. And I always think, well, do something about it then. Like, let's change the situation because we have the control over it. It's up to us, right? We just got to make a change, put in the effort. And so, yeah, I make a conscious effort to, if someone says, how are you doing? I'm always glass half full. I'm always like, yeah, really good, thanks. I'm having a really good week, because I am. A lot of the time, if I'm not, I'll be honest and say, actually, no, I'm having a really bad week. But I won't default. If I'm doing well, I won't say that I'm not bad. So it's a slight shift in language pattern, but I think it's quite important and comes from a much wider issue, I think. Sorry to butt in there.
No, absolutely. It's a great point, that not bad. I mean, it's the default answer. But when you dig in, it's not a small thing at all, actually, the way that people respond. It sounds like we're sort of doing this like nitpicking over small responses, but actually, I think a lot of people, when it comes to a Monday, and if you ask them how they are, they've already decided that day is going to be a bad day because it's a Monday, or Tuesday, up until the point where maybe you get to Thursday and Friday. That's when they can start to say that, they allow themselves to say, yeah, I'm really good. But that will make a difference to their mood, no doubt, because if they decided they wake up that it's a Monday, they almost switch the day off. They almost say, look, today's going to be a bad day. I'm at work and it's a Monday. And you almost write off a day that's going to be poor. So not a small thing, I don't think, to point that one out. So something that I came across in the book, The 4-Hour Workweek, is a term called lifestyle design. And this is probably the first time that my eyes were open to a different way of living other than just following the society's 9 to 5, Monday to Friday work week. So can you explain a little bit about lifestyle design and why you think it's important?
Yeah, the concept of lifestyle design is amazing. It's really eye-opening. It gives you a lot of control back once you realize that you have the control to design it. If you think of your life as like a project and you're the architect of that project, you get to design it exactly as you want it, right? And that includes your personal life, what you do as hobbies, your work, what you do for money, how much time you spend, like what the balance is. It's incredible that you can take active control of how you live your life and just decide what kind of work you want to do, where you want to do it, when you want to do it, like what time of day you want to work, what kind of life you want to lead outside of work. It's really important because it gives you back control over your own life and you're not just kind of coasting along on the conveyor belt, going with societal expectations. You're consciously stopping at every stage and really designing your life to align with your values and passions and desires and kind of the way you want to live. And when I read that book, The 4-Hour Workweek, which if you haven't already, you should definitely have a read of it, or even just listen to the audiobook in the car if you're commuting or on the train on the way to work. But my wife Becky and I followed the principles. Me more than her. I read the book and I was like, you've got to read this book. It's a game changer. And I took it upon myself to actively implement lifestyle design. So I used a Trello board of activities and things that we needed to do to create the lifestyle that I wanted to achieve for ourselves. So it sounds cheesy, but we actually did it. We architected a life that we wanted to experience. So at that time in our lives, that was the ability to travel, to be free, to live anywhere in the world. And so we did. We left our jobs. We were both in good, high-paying, secure, respected jobs in the city, and we left and moved to Thailand, and lived in Chiang Mai in northern Thailand, and moved to Bali and lived in Canggu and Seminyak and all over, and then went to Vietnam and lived in Da Nang in Vietnam, and all that time still running our businesses from a laptop, whilst we were living on the other side of the world. And I think it's some of my ex-colleagues who were at the job that I was working at and some of my friends at the time, I remember they were like, the look on their faces when I tried to explain what we were doing, they couldn't really get their heads around it. They were like, well, firstly, how is that possible? You know, that's like the first brick wall that they hit, where they're like, how is that possible? Because what about like your job? What about the security? What about medical care? The NHS? Do you not care about that? Like, what about your house, all your stuff? Like, what about your job, your pension, your, you know, the long-term incentives that you have at your work, all of that stuff. But the thing is, all of those things, all of those obstacles are just little hurdles. And it's like, well, is the prize at the end of it worth solving those hurdles? You know, is a life of autonomy, freedom, flexibility, control, enjoyment, and passion worth figuring out how to rent your flat, sell some of your stuff, and get private health insurance? You know, it's like, if you could figure those things out, it seems completely menial to like focus on the obstacles rather than the end result, because the end result so far outweighs the hassle that you have to go through to get it. And for me, looking back now, we're at a different point in our lives now. We've settled back in the UK for now. We've got 2 children now. But that move was the best thing we ever did, because it showed us a whole new side to life. You know, we felt initially like maybe we're the only ones doing this, or we're going to be on this like lone path. But as soon as we got there, I met lifelong friends from all over the world who see the world the same way that I do and that we do, who earn ridiculous amounts of money with their businesses. They run them all online. They use just a laptop to run them. And they've got that flexibility to work where and whenever they want. And, you know, they're not stressed. They're not burnt out. They're not, you know, drinking every night of the week to try and mask the pain of not having a fulfilling work life. So I think for many people, stepping off that conveyor belt and embracing lifestyle design, that can be the key to overcoming the Monday blues. Because if you're doing the work you love, there's no reason to dread Mondays. You look forward to Mondays if that's the case.
Yeah, great to hear about how that really opened your eyes to the other opportunities. And that's what happened to me when I read that before our work week. And the idea of lifestyle design, it gives you permission to actually look at your life in a different way and start to think, how would a perfect life look for me? But obviously within that, we still need to get work in there, because we still need to earn a living to get by. So with lifestyle design, obviously there needs to be some form of job satisfaction to be able to live a life that we love and to really enjoy the lifestyle that we've built for ourselves. So how can we go about job satisfaction if we're not in a job at the moment that we don't particularly feel fulfilled in? How do we go about designing a life around a job that actually we do enjoy?
Yeah, well, one of the ways you can do that is through an e-commerce business. It's so well set up for the lifestyle design outcome that is probably the reason why we both chose to run e-commerce businesses, you know, because it's fully online. You don't hold any stock. The whole thing can be run from a laptop. You don't need to, like, you have satisfied customers. Everybody's happy. You can earn more than you would ever earn in your job working 9 to 5, and you can do it from anywhere in the world. So I think and you can outsource and automate a lot of it as well. So you're not actually the one in the weeds doing the day-to-day tasks. And so you're in control. You get to design the business around the way that you want your life to be. And the thing is, if you're passionate about building a lifestyle business, because of the reasons we've mentioned, the autonomy, the control, the travel, the amazing experiences you can have, it naturally makes Mondays something to look forward to again. Because it's funny, we were talking a little bit offline before this episode started, right? That I was like, what day of the week is it? And that is a classic example of like an entrepreneur who's just kind of, you know, like occasionally I'll have a Wednesday off, or I'll take a Tuesday off, or I'll just take a Sunday off. But it's not because it's like, oh, that's the expectation. It's just because that's the day that I want to go and take my family out for lunch somewhere, you know, or a trip, or do something just because we can. Often we will just go out in the week because it's quieter. You know, you can get reservations places. It's not as busy, right? And I think because we chose to build that level of freedom into our lives, sometimes if it's a Sunday and I'm not doing anything and I'm kind of sitting there purely just because it's a Sunday, I can't wait for Monday, because I'm like, I can't wait till the world wakes up till I can get back into, you know, building or growing something. And it's because I'm driven. I love the challenge of building, growing, making something that I can, you know, create from an idea in my head. Like, I'm going to start an e-commerce business, right through to I now have e-commerce businesses up and running that I can run from anywhere, that earn me money from a laptop. And like that, to me, we live in such an incredible age that that's even possible. So I can't wait to jump back in sometimes on a Sunday. So I almost have the inverse of the Monday blues. I'm like waiting for Monday, because I'm like, yes, let's do it. The world wakes up. We can start, you know, whatever. If you're interacting with suppliers and things like that, then they may be off at the weekend. So I think just having control back over your life and your time can make you feel so much more fulfilled and happier overall.
I agree completely. It's such a big part of life. If you can really enjoy your work, it's going to make such a big difference to how much you enjoy your life. I think for some people, certainly a few years ago when I was in my job, if I heard people say that they were actually looking forward to a Monday, I really would be surprised, and it almost doesn't feel real to hear that. So we probably have to shatter some beliefs that people might have that they can't possibly be looking forward to a Monday. But now in the position that I'm in, I've seen both sides now that I run my own e-commerce business and I've left my 9-to-5 job. I know that it's 100% possible to actually love work and really enjoy Monday mornings again, because you start to work on things that you've actively decided to work on, because those are the tasks that you enjoy and you're building something that you love to build. So I challenge anyone that has a thought in their mind when they hear that we love Mondays, that's probably a great sign to you that you're not quite there yet in terms of you haven't found that one job or you haven't started something that you can really enjoy. But that's an opportunity for you to jump on the back of that and start to look at life a bit differently and think, how can I start doing something that I do really look forward to and enjoy? And absolutely, as I said before, this episode is about the fact that we're so fortunate in today's day and age that there are opportunities out there. There's just an abundance of choices. We've chosen e-commerce and dropshipping for multiple reasons that I'm sure we'll go into as our vehicle to really achieve that freedom away from the 9-to-5 cultural society that we're in. But there's so many options out there today that you really can get away from that construct and start to enjoy Mondays again. So dropshipping, Lewis, let's dive into it a little bit more. How does this business model that we follow, how does that fit into lifestyle design and changing the way that we think about Mondays?
Well, yeah, so e-commerce as a business model is fantastic. All types of e-commerce are incredible, but specifically the model of dropshipping that we use, which is called our home turf advantage model. So we both have businesses built using that model where you have high profit products. So, you're looking at upwards of £100 profit on a single order a lot of times, and next day delivery to your customers. So you're not dealing with suppliers from China. You're not selling low ticket products from China and low priced items where you're making hardly any profit and it takes ages to be delivered. You're working usually with domestic suppliers in the same country that you're operating in. You're selling to customers in that same country. It's next day delivery. It's fast. It's low hassle, low admin, super high profit margins on the products because the price of the products is so high that the percentage margin doesn't have to be that high. It's a great way to achieve lifestyle design because, if you're making a sale of £2,000, for example, and on every £2,000 sale, you make, say, £600 in profit, how many sales do you need per month to replace your current income? Probably not that many, right? If you calculate that now, how many lots of £600 profit do you need to happen in a month to replace your current salary? Once you figure that out, you realize, oh, well, yeah, then I'd rather just have a business where I make a handful of sales per day, for example, and can then build my life around that business. And the reason that it works so well is because it gives you the freedom to really run your own business from anywhere at any time, and you're not tied to that specific location or, a strict schedule or anything like that, because a lot of the things in these businesses we can set up to be automated. Anything that we can't automate, then we would definitely outsource and bring in a virtual assistant who can take care, of customer support emails, or if you have any phone calls from customers or dealing with suppliers, stuff like that, a lot of that stuff can just be outsourced. And it just means that you have the potential to earn way more than you ever did from your traditional 9-to-5 job, but that you can really run a business that's rewarding, that's fulfilling, and learn new skills, and overcome challenges. A lot of the people in our Dropship Unlocked program have gone on to create e-commerce stores for other people as a service and built like another business off the back of building just their own business. And all of this is not even to mention that the whole time you're building an asset, like a business that has value attached to it, that you could then even sell in months or years to come, which is incredible to think that what you're building is not, you're not just suddenly trading your time for money. And then when you stop, the whole thing stops. You can build up an automatic income generating business that at some point in the future, you could say, okay, I want to sell it now. And you could sell it for 30 times the monthly net profit. So if it was making, say, £10,000 a month profit, which, isn't that many orders. If it's 100, 200 to £600 profit per order, if it's making 10 grand per month in profit, you could sell it for 300,000 at a 30 times monthly multiple. So it's just a thought exercise and also an explanation really of why we chose that model for our lifestyle design vehicle.
Yeah. I mean, when you go through all of the different reasons why dropshipping and e-commerce makes sense as a way out of the 9-to-5, it's a no-brainer. It certainly was for me. And that's the reason why I decided to leave my 9 to 5 and build a dropshipping business. And now I enjoy a much better lifestyle while earning more money than I did in my 9 to 5 as well. So hopefully this episode has been inspiring, useful. We want this to be helpful and to show you that there are other ways other than just living for the weekend and dreading that Monday and getting that pit of your stomach feeling on a Sunday that you're really not looking forward to the next day. So hopefully this has been helpful for everyone listening. But firstly, we want to also give some practical advice for people. So it's not just all words. What can people take away from this episode, Lewis, and start to think about how they can stop dreading Mondays and start designing their own lifestyle?
Yeah, first thing I'd do is pick up a copy of The 4-Hour Workweek. I think that's the book that started it all for me. So pick up a copy of that, listen to the audiobook if you're not massive into reading books. And then just start out once you've read that by exploring what you really want from life. Don't be limited by what other people around you have or what their goals and dreams are, because they're not you. Figure out what are your passions, your values, your dreams, and dream big. Don't be limited by the fear of judgment of other people, of saying like, oh, you'd never achieve that. People like who look kind of down and turn their nose up at you because you've got big goals. Open up a PowerPoint presentation slide on your computer or a Google slide or whatever, or a keynote, and throw in all of the photos in your life or from Google Images that represent what you want to have in your life. So create a vision board. For me, it's pictures of, the dream house, the dream beach in Mexico where I love spending time, the house that I'd want in the future with my family, putting photos of my family in there, what I want to do when they're grown up, how I want our family to be raised, amazing food, my favorite restaurant, favorite hotel, growing an amazing brand, having an amazing team, like doing fulfilling work, changing people's lives, like all of these things that you would want. And those are mine, right? But you put your own photos in that represent where you want to go with your life, what you want to do. And then once you have your vision board in place, that's what you can refer to every day. So print that out, have it on your desk, have it there to constantly remind you of what you're striving for. Then, as we talked about earlier, start doing something about it. Start educating yourself about whatever the business model you choose to use as your vehicle to get there. For us, we both decided that high ticket dropshipping using the Home Turf Advantage model was that vehicle, and it's worked out really well. There are plenty of resources available if you want to learn about it. We've got our podcast. You can go through the whole back catalogue of these episodes. We've got our training program. Or if you just want to get started, there's a great starting point, which is my Home Turf Advantage book. So if you head to htabook.com, you can pick up a copy of that. But whatever you decide to do, just take some action. You can start your own dropshipping business. You can learn from your mistakes. You can keep improving. You can join a community of like-minded people who are on the same journey as you. And it might be challenging at first, but remember that the rewards at the end of it far outweigh all of the hassle of the hurdles and the obstacles that you have to overcome once in order to get there, which sets you up for a life of fulfillment and enjoyment afterwards. Just a quick heads up, if you'd like to share your questions, stories, successes, or challenges, you can email us directly at podcast@dropshipunlocked.com. And you never know, we might even feature you on the next podcast episode.
Also, if you want access to today's show notes or any of the resources we've mentioned in the episode today, then head over to dropshipunlocked.com/podcast. We also have a small favour to ask of you. If you enjoyed the show so far, you could take a minute to leave us a rating and review on your podcast platform of choice.
You wouldn't believe how much your reviews help us grow the podcast. We'll even read out some of our favourites on the next episode. So if you want to be featured on the show, please do go ahead and leave us a review today. Thanks so much for your support. We really couldn't do it without you, and we absolutely love hearing what you think of the podcast.
Now let's answer a question from one of our listeners. And this week, the question has come in from Chris. And the way he's got his question in is the same way that you can get your question in to the podcast. All you need to do is email podcast@dropshipunlocked.com. And we'll be answering your question on an episode coming soon. So Chris has asked, could I hear a bit of a walkthrough for how you would sign a supplier over the phone at different stages of your business existence, i.e. pre-launch, just launched, 6 months in operation, or even 1 year in operation?
Yeah, great question, Chris, and happy to help with this one. So I think signing suppliers is going to be a key part of growing your business, and saying the right thing is absolutely essential to getting them to come on board with you, to work with you, to be a partner for many, many years to come. In fact, this is probably a subject that's better covered through, we actually have some supplier scripts that you can use and read. So if you pick up a copy of our book at htabook.com, we kind of talk about it in the book, but also on that process of buying the book. After you've bought the book, on the next screen, we give you the option of picking up a copy of our supplier script as well. So if that's something that you'd like to do, grab a copy of the book, and on the next page, you can actually get a copy of our supplier scripts that we use, where we kind of break this all down. But just to give you a bit of a flavor of what you should keep in mind when you are on the phone with suppliers. And by the way, that's the way that we advise contacting suppliers. It's the highest level of rapport building and trust is the phone. You can't achieve the same thing through email or whatever. Go into the conversation knowing that it's a 50-50 partnership. You know, it's not just them doing you a favor. You as a retailer are their route to market if you've picked the right suppliers. And that's a whole different question. It's a whole topic of a whole new episode. But if that's the case, then the suppliers rely on you for their sales as much as you rely on them. So knowing clearly all of the benefits that your new supplier will get by working with you. So for example, the increased brand awareness, the increased market share that they'll be able to get over their competition, the increased marketing spend that you as a retailer will put into marketing of their products for them on your brand website. And so, yeah, I mean, if you're pre-launch, if you're not yet live, you asked about the different conversation types depending on where you are in your journey, then a nice trick that you can do is use the pre-launch date or use the launch date to add in a little bit of urgency and set a deadline for the supplier in an authentic way. So say, for example, you were launching in 3 weeks from now, you could say, you know, in 21 days from now, we're going to be launching this business. We'd love to have you on as a brand because we think that your brand aligns perfectly with our customer demographic and who we'll be targeting as customers for these reasons, X, Y, Z. You know, here's why your brand is a great fit for our brand. Here's what we stand for, and here's what we could do for you. And then also, we think you'd be able to generate way more sales by working with us. You know, have your business information readily available, have everything to hand, your company registration number, your, you know, all your details, your trade references, things like that. And then we kind of go through that. We've got a whole list of like FAQs in the supplier script. So really, like that probably is the best place to go for that. In answer to your second part of your question, what do you do once you're live and once you are up and running? Well, it's a lot easier at that stage because you have the existing suppliers. So you can say, well, look, we're already working with your competitors. We'd love to have you on board as well. And they're much more likely to want to work with you. So hopefully that's a brief summary that helps, Chris. But as I say, yeah, for more in-depth conversation about how to speak over the phone, we'll probably do an episode on that soon about signing suppliers, but definitely head over to htabook.com to pick up a copy of the Home Turf Advantage book and then the supplier guide afterwards, if that's something that you'd like.
Perfect. Thank you for your question, Chris. Signing suppliers is such a huge part of running a dropshipping business. So thank you very much. And thanks, Lewis, for the tips and the answer to that question. So we'll quickly read out as well a recent review for the podcast. So we'll make sure we highlight these as well on the episodes. And it's a different Chris this time. This is a different Chris who's left a review. So thank you, Chris, for your review. Chris said, really pleased you guys have done this podcast and looking forward to listening more.
Thank you very much for your review, Chris. We're really glad to hear that you've been enjoying the podcast. And if you fancy making your voice heard on our podcast, then it's easier than you think. All you have to do is leave us a review or a rating on your preferred platform. Alternatively, drop us a comment on our YouTube channel and you might just hear your review on our next episode. But before we wrap up, consider sharing this episode because by doing so, you're growing this community passionate about dropshipping and e-commerce. It's really exciting for us to watch this expanding community of the podcast listeners all actively seeking personal growth and striving to achieve their goals through lifestyle design. So share this on social media or send this episode to some close contacts through a WhatsApp message. And let's really build a thriving community, all striving to build a better lifestyle through e-commerce. Remember, every single share can bring a valuable new perspective into our community, making it an even better place for us all to be.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Dropship Unlocked podcast. We hope you found the discussion both inspiring and entertaining.
If you're ready to begin your own high-ticket dropshipping journey, then here's what to do next. I've taken all of the years of my own experience, both in running my e-commerce businesses and teaching hundreds of others how to do the same, and I've condensed it all into my book, The Home Turf Advantage. It's your comprehensive guide designed to help you create your own e-commerce business. And you can grab your copy today at htabook.com.
Stay connected by subscribing to the podcast. This way you'll never miss an episode packed with valuable insights. And if you enjoyed what you heard today, please leave us a review. Your feedback motivates us and we love sharing our favourite reviews on future episodes.
And thank you for deciding to spend your time with us today. We really appreciate you and we look forward to sharing more high-ticket dropshipping insights with you on our next episode of the Dropship Unlocked podcast.